Okay, so today
Okay,
we're
sir.
going
Okay,
to
sir.
looking at what if scenarios in Excel, and all of you have this manual. You can open your manual to practical exercise 3, what if scenario, all right? And what is the aim for this particular module is to further introduce you to spreadsheet application. And while doing that, you learn how to use some of the functions of Excel, which includes ability to use cut, copy, paste, and copy formula, understand the what if scenario, what we mean by what if scenario, understand the ability to arrange your spreadsheet appropriately, use absolute and relative addressing, or what I call absolute and relative referencing, value changing automatically each time uh, for a specific value. So these are going to be the learning outcome for this session. And I'm sure that by the time we're done, you should be able to carry out similar tasks or what if scenario on your own accord. So the first thing you want to do is to start your Microsoft Excel application. Then we're going to arrange our spreadsheet in this manner. Okay, we have a value for X in cell A3 and a formula that will work on this value in cell B3 and also in cell C3. Okay, so this will
Okay,
help
sir.
us to understand cell referencing, and we have a spread out from number 4 to number 12. So now I'm going to move over to my spreadsheet. Right? So here is
Okay,
my
sir.
spreadsheet open, and I'm going to begin by setting up my spreadsheet just the way we have it in the manual. So I have X on
Thank
A3, so I
you.
put X at this point. Then on my B3, I have X raised to power of 2/10, just the way it is. Then on my C3, I have 100 all over square root of X. So there you go. I'm going to just open the boundary a little bit to accommodate what we have in C. Then I move to my A6, where I have value 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So now this is the spread out. Let me centralize everything I have and what is going to come up in this part. So I'll highlight everything from X, and I'll go to my alignment on Home tab and click on Center. So everything is centralized now. So I want to get the corresponding value of 4 that would satisfy this equation of X raised to power 2/10. How am I going to do that? Anytime I want to put in a formula, the first thing you need to do is to put the equals to sign. All right? Then I have X raised to power 2/10. So I will click on this cell because this will be the value of my X at this point. Then I go to my keyboard and press Shift 6 for raised to power Then I type in 2 divided by 10. It is that simple. And I click on enter. I have the value as 1.6. So that is my value. So now I'm going to populate for the rest corresponding cells underneath 4 for the expression x raised to power 2 over 10. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to click back into the expression that I just brought up. I go to the lower right corner of the cell till I see the small black arrow. Then I left click and drag down. Once you do that, the value for the other cells for the expression will pop up. Okay? And why is it important for us to put cell reference while doing this and not just put equals to 4 raised to power 2 over 10? So we work with cell reference for 2 reasons. One, because the value here might change. So we want to make our sheet automatic. And even I wrote 4 here, if I change this value from 4 to any other number, let's say 20, the value here will change automatically. So let's see that. So instead of 20 and F4 and I have 20, I press enter. You see that the value here changed to 40. All right. That is because I've used the cell reference for my calculation. That is one. Secondly, cell reference is important so as to enable us to populate other cells, just like I did with the other cells for 4 to 12. And even I put 4 here, then by the time I drag down, I won't have the value or the corresponding values for other figures, just like I have represented. So anytime you are working, it is important for you to work with cell reference on your spreadsheet. So moving along, let me do similar thing for this expression. So for 4, I'm going to say equals to, the first thing I have is 100, which is a constant. Then divide by square root. I just press SQR, then you see square root will pop up. I double click. Once I double click, it asks me of a number. I click into the cell where you have 4, and I close the bracket and press enter. So I have the value as 50, which is the solution for this expression. So the same thing, I go to the lower right corner till I see the small black arrow. But now, instead of dragging down, I'll just double click on my left button. And the solution will come up. Okay? So while I still have these cells highlighted, you can see that my solution is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decimal places. This is too much. I just want it in 2 decimal places with the affected cells still highlighted. I right click. I go to format cell. I go to number and I say 2 decimal places. Yes, and I say okay. So automatically we will see that all the range of values have turned to 2 decimal places. So with that, we are fine. All right. Then if you check your manual, you will see that what I have on my screen is the same solution as what you have on your manual. All right. So that is how to go about this solution. Very quickly, I want to explain what I mean by absolute referencing. All right. What we've done here explains relative referencing. Relative in the sense that by the time we have a change of cell going downwards, okay, By the time you have a change of cell, just a minute, I want to illustrate with an annotation tool. By the time you have a change of cell going downwards, the next corresponding cell will be highlighted, and that is what we use for calculation. All right? So take for instance, here I have 100 square root of 6. If you look into our formula bar, okay? The next one is, the next one is 100 square root of 7, 100 square root of 8, 100 square root of 9, 100 square root of 10. All right? So this explains relative referencing. So the formula is changing relative to the value of x, which is corresponding to the particular cell highlighted. So that is for relative referencing. So let me write it here. Relative referencing. Right? So, but sometimes we might work with what we call the absolute referencing. Absolute referencing. So what is the characteristics of an absolute reference? The characteristics of an absolute reference simply tells us that for any movement down this cell, the value of x will not change. It is absolute or it is kept constant. And how do we keep a cell constant? We keep it constant by the use of the dollar sign. The dollar sign, right? The dollar sign before and after the cell nomenclature. And we are going to take an example right away, very example that we're all familiar with, which is the times table. Okay, times table. So take for instance, if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And at this point, I have 1 already, and I have 2, I have 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so let me centralize what I have here. Good. So I want to get the corresponding value when I multiply this expression. So I want to get the corresponding value at this point. So let me maximize it to make it both bigger. Right. So the norm is we're going to have 2. All right. I'm not doing the math yet. I'm just doing explanation so that you stay with me. 2 times 2 for this first cell. Then here we have 3 times 2, right? Then we have 4 times 2. Then lastly, we have 5 times 2. Okay? So we can see that for this particular expression, let me bring up my annotation tool again. For this particular expression, 2 is constant, where this is not constant. Okay? So we can say that what we have at this point. What we have at this point is absolute. All right, absolute. Absolute. And what we have at this point is relative. Okay? Is that clear?
How did you highlight the 2 and 3? The
That is
the the
just,
number that
don't worry, that is
constant.
just for, I'm doing that from the app that I'm using to do this recording session. That is not from Excel. The point is, do you understand the absolute and the relative referencing style and the explanation given? So,
You can go over it a little bit again. Just brush through it.
so for this particular cell, you have 2 times 2. The corresponding cell is 3 times 2. This is 4 times 2 and 5 times 2. So for the whole expression, 2 is constant. We call it the absolute. And 2 to 5 is ranging, is changing what you have here, and we call it the relative. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. So with this knowledge now, if we are to work on Excel, since you can see that 2 is constant, we can keep these 2 constants while we are doing our expression on Excel. And I say how we make 2 constants is by adding the dollar sign, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Very good. So if you look at the cell, which cell do we have this number 2? That is cell what? F20, isn't it?
F21.
20, look at it well.
Oh yes, 20.
So that means if we want to make these 2 absolute for this expression, what we are going to do is to say, okay, we have an F20 somewhere, right? Will come before the alphabet. You can do that here as well. And we add a dollar sign. We come after the alphabet, add a dollar sign. So once you do this, we have made this cell an absolute, and we are going to do that in the calculation that we're going to do next. All right? So let us go over to Excel and perform the mathematical calculation for this. So I let all this go. And at this point, I say equals to this cell times this cell. Okay? But I now come before the F and I add a dollar sign. And after the F, I add a dollar sign and I press enter. All right? So I
Okay.
can go to the lower right corner and drag down. So it will give me the value for all the other cells. And if you click on F21, look at the formula bar, you will see that F20 is kept constant. If we move down, still F20 is constant. All right? F20 is constant till the last cell. to the last cell here. F20 is constant. Okay? So that is how to work with relative referencing. So if I may ask, if I'm to do for 3, can we go over the expression together? That will simply be equals to this cell times this cell, isn't it? Right? But before I click enter,
Yeah.
I go before the G and I say I add $sign. I come after the G, I add a $sign, and I click enter. So with that, I can drag down.
So the dollar sign only represents absolute referencing.
Yes. So it will keep this cell constant while I'm dragging down for values for the corresponding cells. So if you look at the formula bar up, you notice that G20 is constant. Okay? So we'll do the same thing for 4. You can just go ahead and complete that on your own. Sorry, equals to 2 times H20 before and
Dollar
after
sign.
the alphabet, and I drag down. Same thing for 5. So equals to this times this. And I come at the $sign, click enter. So there you have it. So that is how to use the relative and absolute referencing. As your homework, you are still going to represent or create a timetable for me, but this time you have 1 to 20 on your column. So this will continue to 20, and 1 to 20 on your row. All right, so I want a multiplication table for 20 by 20. Right? Just to show that you understand what we are working on. So that is that for the absolute and relative referencing exercise. All right? So next is the one you're going to do as your homework, which is the silo. It's very simple. All you have to do is to pay attention to details as you work. What this will help you achieve is to help you to understand what if scenario, which is a logical function, and for this particular exercise, help you in estimating what will be the total cost of creating or designing, or sorry, not designing, this is the design already, of manufacturing this design in a real life scenario. So your Excel table is going to look just like this. You write silo investigation in what if spreadsheet. You have your dimensions and your unit costs, everything spread out. Then on your A6 will be your length. Your A7 is your radius. Your A8 is your height. Then you have the unit cost for your roof, your wall, and your floor. You set up your Excel in this manner. You have your item, area, cost, and volume. Then you have hemisphere, cylinder, disk. Then your work is to calculate what will be the area of the hemisphere in this particular cell, which is your B12, the area of your cylinder in your B13, area of your disc in your B12. All right? So once you get the area, you can get the total cost of such area. which will be a multiplication of the area you've gotten times the unit cost, depending on what you are working on. If it's the hemisphere, you know that the hemisphere is the roof, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So that will now be your area times 400, which represents the root. Then your cylinder will be the area times the wall, because your cylinder is the wall, right? Then for the disc, it will be your area times the floor, because your disc represents the floor of this design to get the cost, all right? When you're done with that, you now go to your D12 and calculate the volume for hemisphere, then get the volume for cylinder and the volume for disc. All the formulas have been given to you. You don't need to crack your head. If you look at this place, you see area for cylinder, hemisphere, disc. Then here you have volume of hemisphere. Here you have volume of cylinder. Okay, so your work is to just do the manipulation and have that. So once you've calculated the area, the cost for that area and the volume, next thing is for you to now sum it up to get the totals. So if you see your A16, you have totals. So B16 will be the total of your area, C16 will be the total of your cost, and D16 will be the total of your volume. And once you're done, you are done with the first task. Then we'll now start applying what if scenarios to this. And you can see some of the breakdown for you. Take for instance B12. B12 is a hemisphere. It has been broken down for you. So you are going to type in equals to 2 times pi in this manner times your cell reference raised to power 2, which is the same thing as area of hemisphere represented by 2 times pi times the square of your radius, and in that manner. So this is very simple. Okay, when you do that, you now sum. I've explained all this for you. Task 3b tells you about the sum. Then you save your work and try this number 7 using trial by error means. Once you're done, you submit your solution. Then in next class, we'll now talk some more on goal seeking. Thank you for your time and have a nice day.
Okay.